We got the Michael show, right? So I'm responding to this. That I'm on Facebook, right? And I see this, and this dude like, how did energy come into existence? I don't believe there was a beginning, and that it is essentially eternal, as energy can't be created and it can only be transferred. But it is a question I was asked today, and a man that was asking the question apparently didn't like his answer, so he decided to come on Facebook and ask everybody. And I did an answer about Yahweh, YHWH. And, that's my answer right there, Mike Hill. The name of the group is Science, Theology, History, Philosophy, and Discussion. Anyway, I just rebuttal to this person, talk about not that bullshit again. You can't rearrange ancient letters and pretend they're equivalent to a modern formula. And, I basically got into a response, and I believe they deleted it. I've always done videos, you know what I'm saying, with these atheists, and they always talk about this empirical evidence and whatnot. And when I give it to them, they really have no other rebuttal other than something like that. You can't, like energy. I equate God to energy. They say you can't call God energy. There's already a name for energy. Man, they sound like one of my kids. So, you know what I'm saying? I went to telling them about how I was in school, right? For matter of fact, I got the Bible app on here. I went to school for electronic engineer technology, and there was a lot of stuff that I had to remember and recall, and it was kind of difficult because I took all 5 classes at one time. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get the maximum refund money, because I did need that paper at the same time, that education though. I was, you know what I'm saying, I was pretty much taking it a little bit too much. We going to Genesis 1:2. And I did not graduate, but I did learn enough to do some engineering work. I fixed cell phones and stuff like that. But anyway, one of the things I had to learn was, a way to remember stuff. And, one of the things I knew about was the mnemonic devices. And then it's actually a rhyme that you would use to remember something, but there's no rhyming up in this. And what it was, in the class, we were learning something called, hold on, let me switch hands real quick so I can write it down. We were learning something called NP junction. We learn about NP junction materials, right? It's called NP junction materials. This is negative type, positive type, and NP junction materials. And in this one particular lesson, it was called recombination. It's recombination of NP junction materials, right? And I'm going to explain this first, and then we're going to go to the Bible, and we're going to see how this is the perfect mnemonic device that I was able to use. And NP junction material, right? There's a lot of gases or whatever, charged ions or whatever, and we'll call this the N type. Then there's a space, just like in the brain. There's the synapse. Isn't the synapse? It's the synapse, yeah. There's a synapse and the neurotransmitters. There's actually no gap in the brain that the neurotransmitters go through the axon terminal, but they call it a synapse. But there's a space, and this space is called the energy gap, right? So I ain't gonna write all that, but this is the energy gap. This is the void, we'll call this. And then over here we have these other ions, and this is called the P type. And the name for this, the N type, we call the N type the majority carrier. All right, it's called the majority carrier. And over here, it's called the minority carrier, but the more popular name, the one that really goes more what I'm going to correlate it with, is called valence whole pair. All right, valence whole pair. So what happened is when the majority carrier gathers enough energy and hovers over this gap, it begins to hover over one of these, right? So this is it. It's hovering over this. And what it does is the interaction between the two opposing forces pretty much induces light, heat, or radiation. I'm trying to draw this right here. Okay. And what it does is it induces heat, light, or radiation. So we're going to go over this one more time. When the N-type material crosses over and it hovers over the P-type, the valence whole pair, heat, light, or radiation is induced and released. And this is no difference from what we're about to read in here. I actually need to go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. I don't know how I mixed that up. But anyway, chapter 1, verse 2. And it says, in the beginning, right? It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was waste and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved over the waters. And the actual word for that is Here you go, Tihom. That's the Hebrew word for it, which means abyss or void. Same thing like a hole. All right, so it moves over the waters, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, and this was one day. Now, a lot of people talk about, God created the sun on the fourth day, so how could that be the first day? But it just says that God created light. And what God did is that God moved upon the face of the waters. That means over the abyss. He hovered over the abyss, and he said, let there be light. Since God has no reason to talk, no vocals, no mouth, because God is like intrinsic energy, God has no need for flesh at this apparent time, even if he did reincarnate, become born in the form of a man. You know what I'm saying? God would have no reason to talk. He would just induce, and he speaks to the heart. So this is the same exact scenario as a recombination of NP junction materials. It's just like God comes and he hovers over the face of the abyss, and he induces light, and this is what I insert as being the foundation, the what starts the Big Bang, because I believe that the universe was full of formless gases, formless particles, and all it took was this one spark of light for it to cause this big implosion, and you know what I'm saying, therefore everything existed afterwards. So this is the video. This is my response. As far as how did energy become created? Energy can't be created or destroyed. It's just like God. It always existed. There's just no, what could create energy has to be energy. So therefore, you get what I'm saying? So the question must have been a rhetorical question, because it ontologically, it just wouldn't really make sense to a person like me. But anyway, this is Michael. This is one of the first videos that we're going to do. This is on Genesis 1. I'm going to do another video on how, in Genesis chapter 5, God uses certain ages of these people and 10 individuals, and they live up to, like Adam lived up to 930 years old, and people say that's like highly improbable. So I'm going to go by the time frame. You see, God created light on the first day merely by a catalyst effect of opposing forces, and he called that a day. That means God's time is different from our 24-hour time period. So we're going to get back into that. This is the Michael Show, and I'm going to be back on these religious videos. Forget about all the other stuff. I am a sinner. I am not the returning savior. I'm not throwed off crazy. Ain't none of that. I just got this word coming from a sinner just like everybody else. Jesus used to rock it and kick it with back in the gap.